And we're live with the 57th episode of the TRU-U podcast. Excited to have Miss Katie Gall on with us today. Katie is a personal coach for business owners and creatives. She specifically loves working with driven women and multi-passionate women who are ready to move from frantic into forward momentum. As a recovering superwoman herself, she knows what it's like to be pulled between your job, your passions, your family, your relationships, and everything in between. Clients who work with her learn tools and systems to grow their business or creative career and income without sacrificing their health, family, vacation time, or sanity. I love the bio. Keeping it real.
Yeah, thank you.
I love the name. I love your name on IG too. It's actually where.
Thank you. Yeah, that was gifted to me by a friend many years ago before I started my business, and then
Keeping it real.
Yeah, he coined it. I've kind of always been the person that even before like I was in any serious relationships or anything like that, I was just always the person that people came to for advice, for a down to earth perspective, a down to earth outside perspective. And so he coined keeping it real Katie at one point. And when I was starting my businesses, I was like, yeah, that's it.
So you're a natural born leader.
Yeah. Well, I try to be.
Yeah. Well, if people come to you for things, then typically you've got something that
True
to offer. So
true. Yeah.
How long have you been coaching?
Yeah, since 2012, I started off as a health coach, actually a holistic health coach, and I moved into the life, business, personal coaching sphere a couple years after that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
You're tucked away in the lovely state, of New Hampshire.
Yes,
First,
I am.
That's a first. We love firsts here.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, no, it's good here.
Yeah, born and raised in New Hampshire, or?
Yeah, born and raised. Then that being said, I'm also a performer. One of the things that I mean, as you read in my bio, I work with creatives, and a lot of that comes from the fact that the other half of me teaches voice lessons. I have a master's degree in vocal pedagogy. And so I did the New York thing for about 10 years as well, which is actually where I started off my coaching journey. And then I met my husband there. And when we wanted to start like having kids and stuff, we were like, not in New York City. That sounds terrible.
Yeah.
He was from New Hampshire as well. And so we decided to move back home so we could be closer to family.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. I like thinking about thinking and experiencing the transition between small town and big city. Because currently I'm big city, but I'm a original small town guy.
Yeah.
There's so much value to both. Just where you're at in life.
Yeah. You know, I loved New York. Here's what I tell people. New York was great when I was young and single and planning on staying that way for a little while.
Yeah.
But once there was a point where I could basically depend on being angry twice a day. And it was when I had to get on the subway to go into Manhattan from Astoria and then get on the subway again to get back to Astoria. And so when like your only mode of transportation just causes you such anger, maybe you shouldn't be there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a very cool city, but it can be really frustrating after a time.
Yeah, transportation.
Yeah.
I'm a car guy. I have not done the public transportation thing.
I wonder. There is part of me that wonders if LA would have worked not necessarily better for me at the time, but like if I were to go big city, I think it would have to be a city where I could have a car.
Yeah.
Well,
you got it.
You feel like you have a little bit of control.
Yeah, and that's something that people desire. Is like, oh, I gotta be in control. I want to. Actually, you know what's funny? New York, I get mixed. It's like either they totally hate it or they totally love the public transportation. I think I'm a totally hate it guy, but some people just love not having to worry about that and get around and do their thing.
And I will say for a couple of months, for like 2 months, I think maybe before we moved out to New Jersey before we moved back to New Hampshire. and so for a couple of months there, we did have a car in the city. And I can absolutely understand why you would not want to have a car in the city.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah.
That's not fun. So I do understand that. And there is some really great things about the transportation system, but there's also some really just annoying things about the
people,
and if you have to do it like it's dirty. There's do you know the Showtime people? Do you know this thing?
Showtime people?
No. So people will come onto the cars. They're trying to busk, but they're doing it on crowded like subway cars where they'll bring on a boombox and do like an acrobatics show on one of the poles, almost kicking people in the faces, and then like go around begging for money, giving you shitty looks if you don't give the money because you were almost kicked in the face. Like,
oh my god.
Yeah. And that's like a daily occurrence. So
welcome to the big city life, right?
Yeah.
There was something that stood out to me in your bio. Let's pick this apart a little bit. I want you to break down for me. I think I have an idea. I could probably take a stab at it, what you mean, but I want to hear from you. But recovering Superwoman. So tell me about. Actually, can I guess what it is first, or do you?
I was gonna say I want to know what your guess is actually.
Well, I think that it's like when you have everything figured out, or you're like constantly moving and grinding, and you have all these like you just try to be Superman or Superwoman in every situation. You take on all this heaping weight on your back, and it's crippling, and you lose a lot of that energy, and maybe you don't see as much that's available for you or connect with people as intimately when you have that.
Yeah. So you're partially right.
Okay.
It does not necessarily mean you have everything figured out. It means you look like you have everything figured out. Usually, I will say, especially with the people that I work with, and I'll call myself out on this one, like the person that I used to be. I'm not saying that like everything's all fixed, obviously, because we're humans, we're imperfect. But there's usually an outer persona of being super responsible, being a people pleaser, being the person that you can always depend on to do things, being the person who can't slow down. They always have to be doing something. They want to be saving the day to a certain extent. But frequently, internally, you're dealing with anxiety, depression, substance abuse issues a lot of the time, or you're in and out of unfulfilling relationships. Maybe you have health issues. Like there's a lot of internal stuff that is not working out that you actively do not show people. And so you're giving this idea that you are the go-to person that can do anything. And that really fills your cup emotionally to a certain extent, but it doesn't actually do much to take care of you. Like it's not a form of self-care, actually. Yeah. And so, being a recovering Superwoman basically just means that I'm very aware of the fact that I can be that way. And I actively take steps to not be, even when it's really uncomfortable. And even when it means I have to say no.
Yeah, where do you start when you're having a conversation about this with somebody? Do you look within and where it's coming from, or like how do you begin? And then how do you grow?
So there's definitely I am one of my certifications is as a transformational coach. So there's a lot of deep digging in what I do. Where is this coming from? Who is saying this in your head that you need to be this way? But there is also a piece of it that is like, what are you getting out of being this way? Even though there's a bunch of stuff that's not working, what is working because you're this way? So we're kind of looking at both sides of the spectrum there. And so much of my work, and I don't know if this is technically jargon kind of among coaches, but so much of my work comes down to boundaries. Especially for Superwomen and anyone in the creative sphere a lot of the time, because women are very much socialized to be helpers. Men are socialized to be leaders. Women are socialized to be helpers. And obviously that's generalizing to a certain extent, but
Yeah.
there's a lot more women that I've run into, certainly, who are much more worried about, but what happens if I don't ... And there's a lot more men that I've run into who are very like, oh no, I can delegate that to this person.
Yeah, yeah, because they're doing it because they're getting something out of it. I like when you say like, "What are you getting out of
Yeah.
it?" Like, we have a little thing with our work where we do payoffs versus costs, and like the payoffs are
Mm-hmm.
little goodies that people are getting out of it, and a lot of times they're doing it subconsciously, and that's where coaches come in because they can hold that space. They don't even understand they're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Cause they don't, what I found is that my clients really see it as, no, I have to do this because whatever their reason is, as opposed to, oh, I'm doing this because I'm getting ... Even though I can also see that it's not serving me in this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I think that's where like when we experience anxiety or so, because like you said, there's oftentimes anxiety or internal displeasure that comes with doing this stuff, and like
Mm-hmm.
that's why people come to a coach or a
Mm-hmm.
wellness person of wellness that can help them. And like it's really interesting, like it always like you can break down like and ask questions that go to the root of where that either started or the driving force behind that, like it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I think holding a space for those people is so valuable, because it's painful to sit in those spaces and to see it, and then oftentimes they don't know what to do with that information.
Yeah.
And then what
Yeah.
you do with the information is the fun part. Like, okay, well then
Yeah.
now what? What now what?
Yeah. Yeah. But I think you bring up a really good point of the discomfort that
Mhm.
arises, because I mean, I would say especially in America, but I'm sure all over the world, like people don't want to be uncomfortable. Like, why
Mhm.
would you actively walk into discomfort, right? Um, and I think that's part of the work that I actually really love about working with creatives specifically. I work with a lot of performers, and like that's part of our job. Like, I recently was in a show where I had to play a mom who had lost her child. Like, I have to be willing to go to that place, right? And
Mhm.
so I think there's something there's something about being able and willing to walk into discomfort that is a practiced skill that I think coaches are, whether you're a performer initially or not, like coaches are
Mhm.
very good at understanding the practice of that skill.
Yeah. And then like what kind of discomfort is best suited for like, I think that people oftentimes will get that a little mixed up too, is like, well, when is it appropriate to feel uncomfortable versus when is it not appropriate to feel uncomfortable? Like
Mm,
I think that well, for me it's pretty clear, because like if the vision is here and then what you're going to do to get to the vision is uncomfortable, that's pretty clear. But for, I mean, some people, well, I don't know, I'm thinking out loud right now. I think that like finding your form of discomfort, or like your like what matches up to your vision, what makes sense for you to like try on, like what would that discomfort be? It's
mhm.
yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also comes down to someone's like whether their vision or mission or goal is actually aligned with who they are as a person. Because
Mm.
I think so often I'm gonna take back when I used to be a health coach. Um,
Mhm.
People used to come to me. Everyone wanted to lose weight. Everyone who came to me wanted to lose weight.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to do the work of losing weight. Nobody wanted to cut out
Welcome to
calories.
America.
Nobody wanted to exercise more. They would do like the bare minimum, and then they would get frustrated that they hadn't lost 10 pounds.
A fun
Uh,
question is, where else does that show up in your life? Because if they're doing that with health, like it's just, I'm sorry to
oh
jump in on
yeah,
that. I'm sorry
yeah.
to jump in on that, but like, how much is just getting by happening in your life? Like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love that. Yes.
yeah.
And I don't think I asked that of them at the time, actually, but I was like trying to dig into like what's getting in your way and
Mhm.
all of that stuff. But yeah, they didn't want to go into the discomfort of doing things a new way. And so then it
Mhm.
becomes like, okay, you want to be thinner, but you don't want to lose weight, actually. Like, you don't want to do the actual actions of losing weight. So let's adjust. What I ended up doing with most of my clients was like, let's adjust the outcome that we're looking for in that case. Because if you don't want to take the actions to lose weight, that's fine. Let's take the actions to be healthier. Let's take the
Mhm.
actions to have more energy. Let's take the actions to sleep better in that case.
Yeah.
Because maybe that's what you actually need.
Yeah, and I feel like they'll feel better about that if they're being honest with themselves too. Because if you're never going to get where you want to go, or what your big like, if like, oh,
Right.
my dream is to be a skinny magazine cover person, like, okay, that's great, but that's not what you're doing. And then if
Right.
that's your vision, then you're never going to be like you gotta enjoy the experience
Right.
too. And, yeah, and then
Yeah.
I think that's starting somewhere like you said, like, okay, well, maybe this is where you can be at in the next month or two. Like, this is maybe more suitable for you right now, and
Yeah.
see how that
Yeah.
works. Maybe
Yeah.
you'll find that you're ready for something further down the road. But
Yeah. And honestly, that's kind of where the recovering superwoman idea kind of started to come from for me, was
mm,
realizing that in my own businesses, I had this vision of being like a many 6 figure to 7 figure coach in 2 years, but
mm,
I had babies at the same time. like,
mm,
but like we moved across state lines, like from New York to New Hampshire, which is a big move. We had a death in the family. I had a child. He was born 2 months early. We were in the NICU for a month. I ended up having another child like 18 months later. Like,
no.
where am I going to do that? Like, where am
Mhm.
I actually going to put in the work? And so adjusting the expectations and realizing, oh, there's actually that really super ambitious, driven part of me is still me. Like, it's still part of me, but I can't build a 7 figure business and have two young babies at the same time. For me personally, there
Mm.
has to be something that I know other women have done it. I've seen it done.
I like
But
how
I've
you
had to
said
kind
that
of,
for me personally too, and that was your
yeah,
choice, and that's what's beautiful is
right.
that you can choose, but like, and like, I feel like letting things be a little bit lighter on your heart, on your spirit, like, it's
Yeah.
okay. These things happen. Let's adjust. Let's adjust.
Yes. Yes,
And what
exactly.
lessons
Exactly.
are in this? What's available for me in this? In the
Mhm.
NICU, or in the passing, or in the transition? Like, ooh, this is interesting. What will I
Yeah.
look back on in 5 years and say that I grew the most from this in? That,
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly.
well,
And like,
what did you grow the most from those experiences? Now looking back at that, what do you think you grew the most in?
I am way chiller than I used to be. Which has made me much happier.
Okay.
Um, I realized at a certain point I just couldn't do both. They don't go together for me. Again, for me in our
Mhm.
circumstances, they just don't go together. And the thing that I needed to prioritize, that I wanted to prioritize, was my kids.
Hmm.
Like, why would I have them if I didn't want to prioritize them, right? Um, and so I think the biggest the biggest just shift for me was my personal view of success. What does success actually look like for me? And right now in my life, success looks like having two young kids, meaning my clients need to be the kind of people who are not expecting me to be at their beck and call, who are frequently parents themselves, who understand that I might have to cancel because of children. And they also might have to cancel because of children. And I'm not going to be taking on the big, like, 6 figure execs right now because I can't be there in that way yet.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, it creates it creates a balance that is actually manageable.
Hmm. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I like that awareness that you have of yourself. Like, and whatever you choose is what you'll like. That's what's beautiful. Is like what we focus on, we get. Right?
Yeah.
Like, how can we make this happen? And if that's like for right now, it's your children. Like, yes, like that's
Yeah.
beautiful. And then we can ask all these powerful questions too. Is like, how could this look with this or in this place? And like, who are my ideal clients? How does that look?
Right. Right.
Um,
And knowing where I am now and not trying to fight that,
yeah.
what does that mean I can move towards in the future? How can I plan from this spot rather
Mm,
than planning from where I think I should be?
yeah. Talk to me about the super women that you work with and like just your like I want to hear about that and the vision with that and
Yeah, yeah. I um so I'm going to come off super feminist, but it's not like I'm not. So I think the world would in general be a better place if more women had more money and more power.
yeah,
Um
I agree.
which does not mean I hate men, by the way. I'm happily married to a man.
Yeah, yeah,
um, but I think the world would be a better place if there were more women in more spaces of power.
yeah.
But it was really interesting when my husband is very much the kind of person who, when we were going into having kids, um, everything was going to be equal. Obviously, like we were going to do, he was going to get up at night too, and we were both going to feed baby, and like everything was going to be equal. Duh, right? Um, that is not how our system's set up, though. Our system is set up for kind of no matter what, unless you really actively choose to do something differently. The system is set up for women to be out of work longer, which means that we don't make money as quickly, right? Um, which means a lot of women end up just kind of becoming stay-at-home moms, which is fantastic, but not for me.
Mhm. Yeah,
um, and so a lot of women end up being sort of partially because we're socialized as helpers, which I said earlier, and instead of leaders, and partially because of this interruption if you choose to have kids in the middle of your career, you end up just steps behind men, sort of, not necessarily no matter what you do, because there's plenty of families nowadays, especially where the guy will take time off instead of the woman. But if she's choosing to breastfeed, she still has to pump. She still has to take time out throughout her day to do things like that. And so the idea of the super women is, as far as my clients are concerned, it's the women who are really trying to get everything done on top of also being this idealistic mother figure a lot of the time. And for some of them, it's not even necessarily that they have kids, they're just mother figures in their own life. And so they're the caretaker a lot of the time. But for some of them, it is like I'm just starting to work with a single mom who, like, she's a single mom. She's the only one taking care of her kid. She's got to make all the money. She's got to like make him lunches. She's got to do all the things, and at the same time, she's trying to run her businesses.
yeah,
And she's a creative person. And so she's trying to literally do it all. And
yeah.
like, how do you actually do it all? I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
how do you interact with her and like in these spaces? Like, what do you guys work on? Like, how's the conversation sound?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff, again, it comes back to boundaries a lot of the time. Boundaries, your own personal idea of success, and like, what is that really honestly. Um, Confidence, clarity of action, and time management. Those are like, those are kind of I have like pillars that basically all conversations come back to. Um, Not because I'm trying to stick everyone in a box by any means. Like, that's really not what I do. um, but because I think that if we can put it under one of these pillars, we can sort of recognize, like, oh, I'm giving my energy, my money, my time away because this thing is a time suck, or because I keep engaging with this person in this way, or because I actually don't really know what I'm doing over here, or because I'm not confident enough to go on social media and market myself. Um,
Mm.
it kind of all comes down to one of those four
Yeah.
for the most part. And so we're working on inner fears. We're working on what are your massive daily actions that you can take. We're working on that deep inner stuff.
Yeah.
But it's also a lot of like, okay, how can we start to identify for ourselves where our thoughts are coming from and what pillar they belong under? So I know what to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, let's see. I was thinking like when you're like in this space or like well actually how do I say this? I was gonna like ask where this came from, but I kind of got an idea with your background where it came from. Like you're excited to help people because of what you've been through, I'm assuming. That's
Yeah.
kind of where
Mm-hmm.
um um where do you see yourself like with this space like as you guys grow in this? Do you work with other coaches? Is there something like are you what's that all? What's the future vision of this? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. So as I said, I think that I want more women in more like spaces of power and having more money in their pockets.
yeah.
Um, I am also a creative person. I'm also a mom. I'm also neurodivergent. I have ADHD, and so I think that I
It's
bring
a
those things up.
superpower, I think, too. I think it's
Oh,
like a superpower.
I I am the I've
Not to
known that I'm
interrupt,
ADHD for a long time. Huh?
not to interrupt, but I also have that, and I do believe that there's a lot of like if you use it in a certain way, like you can.
Mm-hmm.
There's yeah
That it's something that I haven't talked about much until recently. I was diagnosed like back in high school, and then I just kind of ignored it for
mhm,
a while.
yeah
And I'm finding more and more recently, and I think a lot more information has come out. And it's not, I mean, I don't know when you were diagnosed, but when I was diagnosed, it was like, oh, she broke. Like,
yeah
there was
yeah.
a little
But
bit of
they
like
make it
all of
seem
the
like
negative
it's
things.
belittling, and it doesn't have to be. I
Right.
think that like we're all so unique, but there's something to it that
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and now there's a lot more information out about it. And I think one of the big things that I take away being in more ADHD positive spaces is like, oh, the reason that I'm good at the things that I'm good at is actually because of this thing. The reason that I enjoy the things that I enjoy is because of this thing.
right. Well,
Like
I love
it's
your
so
energy. I
intimately
love your
connected.
energy. You have amazing energy, and I feel like,
Thank you.
and you're an extrovert too. Like we were talking about that before we
Mm-hmm.
recorded, and like I can relate to that, and I feel like that may be somewhat tied into the ADD experience, and
Oh
like
yeah. Yeah.
it's yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
Uh, there, there was a big list that I read at one point that are like what are the ADHD superpower things, and it's like everything that makes you a good coach. It's like being extroverted, being empathetic, being able to think creatively and outside of the box, generally being a creative and multi-passionate person, having a distinct interest in people, like you like the exchange of energy between people usually. Um, and so as I was reading this list, I was like, oh, this is all of the things.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
So what was your original question? I'm trying to
I
remember.
forgot. ADD, we don't know, but we're having a
Yeah,
great
it's true.
time. But this is that's fine. That's why I take notes. That's why you have paper and pens and
Yeah,
phone.
that's true. I didn't take any notes. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. It's fun to think about though, and it's like, would we be as likely to be in these situations if we didn't have it? And it's like interesting to think about like what other people's unique gifts, aka disorders or whatever, really
Yeah.
set them up for other things too. Like we all are so unique, and we all have our own gifts that were given to us that we can use. It's just interesting to kind of look within that and see what it looks
Yeah. 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 I think it kind of makes me think one of the things that is very much an ADD thing is the multitasking. Like you have to be doing
Oh
many things at once.
yeah.
And my husband, his superpower, and I will say this is a superpower, and I do not get it, is being able to just like calmly and rationally work on a problem for like 6 hours in a row and just like chug forward in
Hmm.
this way that I'm kind of like that, in this way that also actually makes him somewhat inflexible a lot of the time. And it's like, huh, why don't you have to
Hmm.
take a pill? You're not being very
Is
flexible right now.
is he an introvert?
Much more so than me, yes.
Hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you think
it's
there's a connection there?
I'm just thinking like to myself like about well, I think that focus if there's a deep connection to what it is that you're focusing on, I think that
Mm-hmm.
people like that of us that have ADD are able to engage a little bit
Oh,
further with
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I think that we're entertained or like oftentimes, but like I feel like I'm a puppy where I get like excited about something else and my focus is like, well, this is already done for me. But
Yeah.
some people like more analytical people, it seems
Yes.
like
Yes.
to sit and to
Mm-hmm.
really pick at things and to understand them deeply. I
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
interesting.
the thing is, like, I could certainly use his work as an example. I'm good at like working through my work. I'm good at sitting down at the piano and practicing. I'm good at singing and like spending lots of time and hyper focusing there. We're good there. But for him, it's like the dishes. The dishes will be done. We will completely finish the dishes. And every time
Yeah.
I do the dishes, all of the silverware is left in there because I get annoyed at it.
Mm.
It's that kind of thing.
Hmm.
you know, where it's like the boring tasks.
And then you got to wonder where, like, what his relationship with like tidiness and where that came from, or like finishing things and not leaving them
Mm-hmm.
undone. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's what coaches like. I think there's a lot of curiosity built within us too. That's like,
Oh
okay,
yeah,
well, where did that like? What's the story behind that? Like, you know,
yeah,
where did that come from? It's interesting to just watch people and to see like how they relate to things and oftentimes a lot of it, and this has been something that I've been working on quite a bit recently, is like understanding the links to childhood and how they were raised and siblings and their community
yeah,
environments. Like so much carried over from that.
yeah. Um, and I will say with the people that I tend to work with, they we end up talking about family of origin all the
Yes.
time, and like a really common factor is they're frequently the first child. They're frequently
Mm,
there was a period where they had to grow up fast for
mm,
whatever reason, and sometimes it's because one of their parents leaves. Sometimes it's because uh, everyone loses money in the family. Sometimes, there's a variety of reasons why that might happen, but they suddenly had to grow up fast,
yeah.
and their safety mechanism was to be responsible. Like that's how they
And
stayed
when
safe in
that
their family.
switch of growing up fast happened, I'm wondering what goes away with that. Like what what may they not be seeing that's along with the new flip of the switch like that allowed them to be a different person with everything else.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um,
And maybe not. I think every case is a little bit different, but it's fun to look at those life altering situations or moments or whatever happens to each of us and be like, man, that's when I began doing this or being like this or when I related to things like that or when this
mm-hmm.
new like shift happened. Like it's just it's really interesting how these moments, these defining moments have such an impact.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm as I'm like thinking through that, I I think say for a couple of my clients, and I would say for me, there's definitely like the thing that you lose is the ability to enjoy something for the sake of joy, if that makes sense. Which doesn't mean that you don't like anything anymore. Like I feel like that sounds like life is a dull and gray place when I say that, but it's more like everything has to there has to be a productive end
Hmm.
to everything. You know, um, I'm just thinking like the difference between me and my husband again, just because that's
Yeah.
been in a pandemic. He's who I've seen the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
The difference between me and my husband when it comes to like playing with our kids, he just plays with them.
Yeah.
He goes on their like wild imagination rides and he has a great time and it's lots of fun. And I am constantly trying to like do activities, which I think is a good balance between the two of us. You know,
Yeah.
you've got the one that does the pure imagination stuff, and you've got the one who, like, I just made a spaceship out of cardboard today.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Um,
interesting to think about too. Like, where do you think on a grander scale does that show up for both of you, him and yourself?
oh, yeah. I mean, for me, that is something that that is some. You know the term thought work?
No.
No. Okay. So it's when you're. So thought work is basically paying attention to your thoughts and questioning whether they're true or not.
Oh, okay.
At its baseline, it's like
Yeah.
it's most coaches do it to some extent.
Yeah.
It's just whether you actually
do it. It's just I never heard, but maybe I've
yeah, it's just whether you label it that way or not. Yeah. So I'm basically doing thought work all the time, every day, all day.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to like my kids want to do something fun, right? The thought that comes up is, oh, I don't know what to do with them. But no, I do. I can get down on the floor and play with them imaginatively. I could read them a book. I could turn on the TV. Or I could create something with them. I could like do a task. I could have them do chores. They're young enough that they think that's fun still. If they're involved, they're like, yeah, this is great. I could like do something with them. And if I choose to do something productive in that way, it gives me a little dopamine hit. And so it's the thing that feels best to me.
Yeah.
So coming back to that productivity is just like, it's the thing that I know is going to give me an insta hit.
Yeah.
Like being able to build a spaceship out of cardboard and get to the end and say, I created this thing. And now they get to play in it and it's fun, right?
Yeah.
But like I built a spaceship.
It's interesting.
It's
interesting that's interesting how that focus for you, like with or the creation of that. It's fun because like when you were talking about your husband and how he's able to just sit in that space for like 6 hours and focus, but yet when there's something, and I know this is for me too, when there's something that really tricks my trigger where I'm like, ooh, this is I can get into this. Connect to it for quite a while with like it, especially if there's constant creation within that. If it's not building, or kind of like me where there's excitement and like
yeah. It is interesting because it's funny because it's kind of our two like it's our switches sort of like you would think that he would be the productive based person.
Yeah.
Like that would be the thing that kind of goes along with it. But for him, he has so much more fun with just blank, creative, imaginative play.
Yeah.
And if I'm faced with that, I'm suddenly like, I don't know how to do anything. I'm not fun. And that's the thought work piece of like, that's not true. It's just that the way that you have fun is different.
Yeah. And I think that like when you do that thought work, like you're talking about, we can make shifts so quick, and then we can look at things in a different lens quickly too. And that's the healing and the shift. Like that's the part that.
Yeah. And you can recognize parts of yourself non-judgmentally that way. Like it doesn't have to, it can come with curiosity as opposed to judgment.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
We talk about that so much. Replace judgment with curiosity. It's so valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when you're working with people, because I work with creatives and business owners for the most part. And both of those spheres, there's tons of rejection. That's just kind of inherent. You know, there's you have to be able to look at things with curiosity. Why didn't that work? How could I have prepared better? What do I need to do next time?
Yeah, with a growth mindset, like that's allowing, like inviting them into that growth mindset. Like every experience is an experience that you're growing from.
Right. Right.
Let's land the plane. This flew by.
Oh my goodness.
First time chatting. Flew by. Couple
I know.
extroverts, ADD, get them together in a room.
Woohoo!
Here we go.
It's a party.
Yeah, doesn't take long. So we like to end it with just if you're willing to share where people can find you and what you're up to. Yeah. Well, I know we talked about what you're up to, but yeah, where they can find you.
Yeah. So keepingitrealkatie.com is my website. Hopefully somewhat memorable. I am on Instagram, keepingitrealkatie. Right? Yes, I think that is accurate.
That's where we talk.
It is? Okay, good. Yeah. On Facebook, Keeping It Real with Katie Gall. And the one thing that I did want to mention, especially since we're talking ADD, do you know about body doubling?
Potty doubling.
Not potty, body.
I thought you said potty. I'm like, oh no, like
no,
crossing
you're like,
streams?
no, and I don't want
not
to.
Crossing Okay, no, I don't. Body doubling, no.
Body doubling, so a lot of people with ADD and ADHD have a hard time focusing, right? Yeah. Especially on things that we're not interested in. Yeah. And so a technique that's frequently used is what's called body doubling, where you basically just need to have someone else in the room. And so I have a group called Commit to Your Shit that is basically just a time once a week, Tuesdays from 11 to 1 Eastern Standard, where we get together. I do a grounding little exercise, and then we get to work on our own shit. It's usually working on what I call the minimum non-negotiables, the things in your business that aren't fun necessarily, that you don't want to do all the time, but that actually really move your business forward. You know, for me, I love my newsletters. I hate creating time to write my newsletters. And so that's the time when I sit down and write my newsletters. For other people, it's content creation. For other people, it is invoicing, maybe, like depending on where you're at in your business. Yeah. And so Commit to Your Shit is something that people could come join us for. And then at the end, we come back together. I'm there for any coaching, any advice that is needed throughout. We're like, it's an interactive group still. Yeah. At the end, we come together and celebrate what we've done.
I love it. And you're not off the hook quite yet. We always end it with one general message for the TRU-U audience, whatever's speaking to you. What would you like to leave them with?
Be honest about where you're at. Wherever that is in your journey, wherever that is in your goals, be honest with yourself about where you're at. Because if you're honest with yourself about where you're at, you can actually take the next right step forward.
Be honest with where you're at. That's powerful.
Yeah.
You're making me think about myself right there when you say that. I love that. Yes.
Other coaches think that's the best.
Thank you so much, Miss Katie. Keeping it real.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for hopping on. This has been great. I'm sure we'll chat more in the future. And
awesome.
Yeah, have fun in New Hampshire.
Thanks. Have fun. Where are you again? LA?
Lake Tahoe. Lake Tahoe.
Lake Tahoe. Right. Yeah. Have fun there. Awesome.
Beautiful. Thank you, Katie.
Cool. Bye. Have a good one. Bye.